Thank you, Dr. Garcino. Our final educational talk is a lung cancer patient's manifesto for modernizing clinical trials presented by Ms. Janet Freeman-Daly. Ms. Freeman-Daly is a retired aerospace systems engineer, a freelance writer, speaker, and a metastatic lung cancer patients activist from the United States.
Thanks to the meeting organizers for inviting me to speak. I'm going to give you a snapshot into a lung cancer patient's manifesto for modernizing clinical trials. I can't address in 10 minutes all of the aspects of clinical trials that could use modernizing. Instead, I'm going to focus on a few issues that have become prominent in light of recent events. I have no disclosures. I'm alive because of clinical trials. My lung cancer progressed to stage 4 despite 2 different lines of chemo and curative radiation. Thanks to biomarker testing and a targeted therapy clinical trial, I have a relatively normal life 9 years after diagnosis. Most patients know clinical trials are not guaranteed to provide effective treatment. However, in this era of rapidly evolving lung cancer treatments, a clinical trial might be a patient's best treatment option. For patients, clinical trials are treatment. Clinical trials are hope. Everyone interested in participating in a clinical trial should be able to access a trial appropriate to their type of cancer. Approximately 75% of people surveyed globally were willing to participate in a clinical trial. And yet, a study published last year found only 8% of adult U.S. cancer patients participated in an NCI or industry clinical trial. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted a stark reality. We have significant disparities between the population of clinical trial participants and the population of people who actually have the disease. And we haven't made a lot of progress dealing with disparities over the past several decades. As a research advocate, a cancer patient, and a person interested in justice, I want to see such disparities eliminated in clinical trials. The first step in eliminating a problem is knowing that it exists. What do disparities in clinical trials look like? One form of disparity has to do with ethnicity. A 2019 study found Black and Hispanic lung cancer patients were consistently underrepresented in pivotal FDA approval studies compared to the population of people who had lung cancer. As you can see, Asians tend to be overrepresented in clinical trials compared to the disease population, whereas Blacks and Hispanics are underrepresented. Preliminary reports indicate Blacks and Hispanics are underrepresented in COVID-19 trials also, despite being disproportionately afflicted by the disease. Disparities exist within age and income as well. A 2019 study found the average age of lung cancer trial participants was around 61 years, whereas the median age of diagnosis was 9 years higher. Age disparities appear to be increasing with time. A 2016 study found cancer patients with an annual household income below $50,000 had 32% lower odds of trial participation than higher income patients. The disparity was even greater in lung cancer. 93% of the respondents in the study were white, indicating that income alone can be a huge determinant of trial participation. Many systemic barriers limit clinical trial participation. One barrier is the healthcare system itself. Does the patient believe that the trial will benefit them or their community? Do eligibility requirements reflect the typical patient population? Another is economic supports. Does insurance cover care at the trial site without prohibitive out-of-pocket expenses? Can the patient get time away from work or cover family obligations? And does the patient have means to travel to the trial site? I'm not just talking about flying to a distant site. Sometimes they can't find a bus. Yet another barrier is technology access. Does the patient have access and skills for remote consent or telemedicine? So what can we do about these disparities? There are three approaches to dealing with disparities in access: equality, equity, and justice. To illustrate these concepts, imagine three people of different heights want to watch a soccer game, but there's a fence between them and the game that blocks their view. Equality gives everyone the same size box to stand on. This may enable the taller people to see the game, but smaller people still can't see. Equity personalizes supports for each person. It gives a box that's high enough to allow a clear view of the game. This is affirmative action. Everyone gets the support they need. Justice removes the barrier itself. All three can now see the game without supports or accommodations because the cause of the inequity was addressed. The systemic barrier was removed. We need to incorporate these concepts into clinical trial design to eliminate disparities. Clinical research is guided by the 4 pillars of medical ethics. I've highlighted 2 of them. Beneficence, which suggests that doing what's best for the patient should also consider the patient's wishes. And justice, which suggests that all patients should be treated equally and resources should be allocated fairly. How do disparities in clinical trial accrual violate the ethical pillars? They deny access to clinical trials for some who might wish to participate. And they put patients who do participate at risk without ensuring the trial will complete accrual and be able to produce useful results. It's been 17 years since the Institute of Medicine published their unequal treatment report, which demonstrated that U.S. racial and ethnic minorities often receive lower quality health care. Not much progress has been made since then, but we can take steps to reduce these disparities in clinical trials. Collaborating from the beginning with community advocates can have a dramatic effect on accrual and trust. One terrific example of this is the Metastatic Breast Cancer Project, which involved metastatic patient advocates in all aspects from the very beginning. This graph shows the project's initial accrual, which increased dramatically when knowledgeable and respected advocates blogged or posted about the project. Because of this partnership with community advocates, the project enrolled over 5,800 U.S. participants in less than 2 years. Incorporating modernized eligibility criteria can also help with accrual. Most traditional criteria were developed in the era of cytotoxic chemotherapy and have been a major barrier to patient enrollment. In July 2020, the US FDA released several guidance documents to modernize clinical trial eligibility criteria. So, do they make a difference? A 2019 retrospective study examined 10,500 records of patients with lung adenocarcinoma in community hospitals. It found almost 48% of patients were ineligible for clinical trials by 3 traditional exclusion criteria: no brain mets, standard kidney function measures, and no other cancers. However, when the modernized eligibility criteria was applied in this cohort, only 1.5% of patients were ineligible for trials. That's over 4,800 more lung cancer patients available to participate. Once a treatment is approved, patients will want to know if the survival benefit is worth the side effects they may experience. In addition to creating tools that capture the patient experience, we need to capture how the experience varies based on characteristics such as age, comorbid conditions, and ethnicity. This will give patients better ways to assess which treatment is the best for them, given their needs, values, and preferences. Greensboro Health Disparities Collaborative partnered with 2 cancer centers to test whether customized supports could improve the experience of Blacks undergoing treatment for early-stage breast and lung cancer. Specially trained nurse navigators worked with patients to ensure they understood their treatment options and had financial and social supports. Before the study, Blacks were less likely to complete treatment than whites. After the study, treatment completion rates increased among all patients, but they increased more in the intervention group and more blacks than whites completed treatment. Personalized supports provided equity. Given the cost and inconvenience of travel to clinical trial sites can be a major barrier to participation, technology such as telemedicine can help eliminate disparities. During the COVID-19 pandemic, several countries began enabling broader use of telemedicine. While this has allowed more patients to see their clinical trial doctor through remote visits, we must be careful to ensure that this technology does not increase disparities. Not all patients can afford or manage broadband internet, devices, and software required for telemedicine. To summarize, here are some ways to address clinical trial accrual disparities. Rethink justice and beneficence. Build trust within the community. Collaborate with community advocates. Modernize eligibility requirements. And design PROs to capture patient experience. Provide custom supports that address patients' needs. And provide tech access and training for remote participation. Thank you for your attention, and good luck eliminating disparities.
This concludes our educational talks. Here to present our first abstract titled Orient 11, Sintilimab plus Pemetrexed plus Platinum as first-line therapy for locally advanced or metastatic non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer, is Dr. Zhang Li. Dr. Li is a professor at the Sun Yat-sen University Cancer Center in China. The discussant will be Dr. Misaka Nagasaka. She is the assistant professor at the Barbara Ann Karmanos Cancer Institute in the United States. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the program committee of WCLC for choosing our abstract for presentation.